In the Kazal borderlands, a huge drought has befallen the region. When the wells dried up and the desiccation cracks spread over the fields, the citizens began to flee in fear. However, Margrave Kazal deemed such actions a serious crime. And so, he sent his soldiers to control the people. People ran back to their houses in fear and shock as the knights killed anyone who tried to flee. The ruthless knights did not even spare innocent children. The commander of the soldiers was Margrave Kazal's son, Lord Kajal. He was a powerful mage who inherited the blood of a divine king. He looked at the people in disdain, calling them dumb beasts with no gratitude. He reminds the civilians that they all were able to survive till now because of the bloodline of a divine deity who blessed them with their lives. A woman tearfully asks for his forgiveness and begs him to spare the children. But a knight instantly stabs her, telling her to shut up. Her child watches the blood trickle from his mother, watching as she becomes motionless on the cracked ground. Lord Kajal calls the knight thoughtless for not being able to enjoy the moment. The knight apologizes, saying he was an ignorant fool. He then asks what they must do to enjoy themselves. Lord Kajal smirks knowingly. He had his soldiers hang up the bodies of the men on trees. He then had wives hold up their husbands to keep them from dying. One knight suggests the Lord string up one man by the waist since he has a gash on his back. This way, he will not die too fast and they will be able to enjoy his slow death. The man's wife cries and begs for mercy. She tries to stop the knight, but he slaps her away. The wife cries for her husband, Ifin, who is dangling from the tree branch. Lord Kajal laughs as he finds the sight absolutely marvelous. He stares at the farm girl trying hard to support her husband and praises her for her good work. He suggests she hold up Ifin nicely and high. He then leaned forth, saying if she did not, her husband's veins would burst open and kill him faster. The woman trembled at his words, and her grip around her husband's legs tightened. A man approached the scene and told Lord Kajal not to be so rash with the blood of the divine king. Lord Kajal acknowledged the knight as Sir Zybek, the master who taught him how to wield a sword. Sir Zybek asks if he really must go to these lengths to punish his people. He suggests he maintain his dignity as a nobleman who has inherited the blood of the god. Lord Kajal smirks and says he will maintain his dignity well enough as long as no one blabs about what he is doing. He asks Sir Zybek if he is planning to prattle on what he is doing here. He asks if he is daring to sully his name as a divine noble acknowledged by the Church of the Kings when he is a paladin. Sir Zybek firmly asserts that the truth will not remain hidden forever. The knight suggests Margrave's son dispose of the woman, but Lord Kajal denies it, suggesting just giving her a whip. Margrave takes the whip and cruelly starts beating the woman. Sir Zybek watches the scene to his horror. The woman continues screaming in pain, but she does not let go of her husband. Lord Kajal was amused by the sight. He tells Zybek to stop frowning, as life is all about having fun. But Zybek stood there, frozen, as he watched the civilians' bodies hanging from the trees. By sunset, Ifin calls out to his wife, Safia. He tells her to run as he will not make it, but Safia shakes her head in defiance. She stares at a coin in her hand, asking Ifin if someone from the messenger clan will really come. She had drawn a triangle on the ground with her feet and closed her eyes, praying. Night soon arrived. Safia regains consciousness as Sir Zybek helps her drink water. He asks her to lower her voice and whether she can eat. Safia soon loses consciousness again. Zybek stands guard while she sleeps. He then asks her to get up, saying he must leave, or the young master will be furious if he finds out that he has been here. He then tells Safia she does not need to hold him, his betrothed, anymore. But to Zybek's utter surprise, Safia throws away the long stick and grabs Ifin once again like before. She then stares at Zybek suspiciously, asking what his name is. She says she will ask the messenger to spare his life when they arrive. Zybek frowned. He asked if she was referring to the soulless heathens who murdered the divine kings. He asks if she sought their aid. Safia nods lifelessly. Zybek confesses that she does not know if they truly exist. But even if they do come, there are 20 well-armed soldiers under Lord Kajal's command, and he is here as well. Moreover, the young lord has blue blood. He says she must know how great the blood of the divine clan of Yiga is, as they have inherited the blood of God. Safia affirms that the messenger will be able to kill that man even if he is a mage. She says to remind him that messengers are mages too. She reminds him that the slayers of the divine kings are called as such as they killed the kings who had the blood of the divine deity. Zybeck sighs, saying she is out of his mind, but he understands that what she has been through is too much for one to bear with a sane mind. He introduces himself as Zybeck, a paladin of the Church of the Kings. He says he is not telling her his name because he wants her to beg the Slayer to spare him. He says he is simply going to fight them with all he has if they appear. He then promises to return by nightfall and leaves. Safia stares at the triangle she drew on the ground, murmuring how she only must wait for 2 days. The scene shifts to a flashback. Ifan showed Safia a coin. Upon asking, Ifan asked if she had heard about the Messenger clan. Safia reveals she heard her father mention them in a bedtime story he used to tell her when she was little. They are the soulless heathens who killed the divine kings. Ifan agrees, saying the gold coin is called the Emperor's Gold. It can be used to call the soulless to him, but he tells her to be careful, as just having one can be dangerous. He discreetly says it is because the Inquisitors of the Church of the Kings will execute her if they find out. He then takes this moment to steal a kiss from her. Safia blushed and punched him friendlily. Blushing, she asks why he would ever think about giving her something so dangerous as a gift. Ifan chuckled, saying it is just in case. He tells her to draw a triangle in the dirt and place the coin in the middle if something ever happens to them. Then someone from the Messenger clan will come and help her. He hopes that they will never have to use the coin. Back in the present, Safia grits her teeth with frustration. She tries her best to endure for 2 more days. But soon, her vision blurred and she slumped to the ground, dead. On the other hand, Zybeck stares into the distance. He notes how exceptionally hot it is. Lord Kajal approaches Zybeck and suggests that he smile. Zybeck reminds him that he will not be able to collect taxes if he kills his citizens. Lord Kajal scoffs, saying letting those ungrateful nomads roam around will only create more bands of thieves. Zybeck suggests that he allows the people to take refuge over the nearby fertile lands. But Lord Kajal asks why the children who were born in those fertile lands have to pay for the sins of such vile fugitives. He coldly says they should not have to suffer because of scum who ruined the fields and tried to run from their crimes. He blames the peasants for having brought a drought because they were unfaithful to the church. He says that it is their crime according to the doctrine. Zybeck says he is twisting the teachings of the church, making him smirk. Lord Kajal says that if some farmers made the lands fertile while others caused a drought, then the right thing to do is punish the sinners and give their lands to those who contribute to their territory. He asserts that he is doing this to save his people, but if Zybeck wants to defy his orders, then he would like to see him try. By nightfall, Zybeck returns to Safia, but he clenches his sword knowingly as he sees her on the ground. He supposed she could not hold on until the end. He knows it will be of no use even if the Messenger clan does arrive as she said they would. He suddenly turns alert as he senses an unknown presence. Soon, a man arrives behind him, pointing his sword at Zybeck. The man warns Zybeck not to turn around or he will cut him down if he moves. Zybeck was surprised. The man had appeared out of nowhere like a ghost and suddenly held his blade to his neck. Zybeck asks the man if he is truly a messenger. The man agrees and asks Zybeck if he is a knight of the Salvation Knight Order. Zybeck reveals he is a paladin of the Church of the Kings. The man smirks and asks if he is not the Seeker. He says it would be kind of hilarious if a paladin sought help from a messenger. Zybeck coldly warns him not to mock him. The man stares at the woman and the hanging man. He comments that it seems he got a gold coin for free since she has already died, but he asks Zybeck to fill him in on what happened. Zybeck swears on his honor that he will recount the events if the man removes his blade from Zybeck's neck and creates some distance between them. The man agrees and floats backward, leaving Zybeck to wonder if he is a ghost. The man hums. He points out that Zybeck seems confident that he would not have been at a disadvantage if he had not snuck up on him. He remarks that a paladin of the church should have that kind of guts. Zybeck asks the man if he is a mage. The heathen reveals that everyone in the Herald clan is a mage except for him. Zybeck grows cautious and inquires whether what the man cast before was not magic. The man says it is hard to distinguish a superhuman-like physical power from magic, but Zybeck does not understand what he is saying. Zybeck questions him about his name and his rank as a herald. The man remains quiet for a while. Zybec reminds him that he has already told him his name. The man then excuses himself and reveals that he is Azadin of the 108 spirits, the Emperor's Herald. Zybec was aware that the 108 spirits are the lowest rank of the Herald clan. But the movement the heathen just displayed proves that he is far from ordinary. The heathen smiles and tells Zybec to tell him about what happened as promised. And so, Zybec takes his time to explain to Azadin the whole situation. Azadin mumbles how the contract has already been established. His words shocked Zybec. An owl arrived and sat on Azadin's shoulder. It says that Azadin responded to the request, but the requester has died. He earned some free gold coins. Zybec was surprised to see a talking owl. The owl suggests Azadin start moving to complete the other mission. Zybec asks Azadin to wait. He asked the man if he was going to receive his reward and leave just because the requester died. Azadin found his words strange and asked if he wanted the request to be fulfilled. He reminds Zybec that his master will suffer if he does so. Zybec takes out his sword and assures him that it will not happen. He then points it at Azadin, saying it is because he will defeat him, the unholy, soulless one. Azadin scoffs. He says he cannot believe that Zybec would shed his blood with the sword that remained silent before injustice. He says that even for a paladin, that is sad. Zybec was enraged, but Azadin questioned who he was truly mad at, him or himself, because he turned his back on injustice. Zybec seethes in anger and asks what he even knows. Azadin questions if he knows the constellations of the night sky, the names, and the myths entwined with them. After remaining quiet for a while, Zybec asked, why is he bringing it up now? Azadin elaborates that humans may see the same thing, but they feel something different. To some, one may look like the protagonist of a myth, but to others, he might be nothing more than a faint, pale light flickering in the darkness. He further adds that it is just like how the sight of them being ravaged may appear different to Zybec compared to the eyes of other soldiers. However, Zybec refuses, saying it is not any different. With regret evident in his tone, he says it is because he could not do anything. He stares helplessly at his sword. He then affirmed that he did not wish to fight with him. He adds that he must revere those who carry the bloodline of the divine king as the knight of the king's church. Azadin remained silent. He then says his sword is no enemy of his if he feels pity for the girl. Azadin then cuts the rope from which Ifin's body was dangling. He also grabs hold of the girl, Safia. He then asks Zybec if he has a shovel. Zybec watches the man put down the two bodies and asks if he is going to bury them. Zybec was utterly shocked as Azadin revealed he would hold a funeral for them. Zybec remembers how Lord Kajal wishes for them to be hung on trees, turned into the undead, and screaming in agony. It is because such a scene would serve as a way for him to reaffirm his power. But the act of burying the corpses is practically the same as challenging him. After seeing Zybec remain silent for a while, Azadin says that it cannot be helped if he does not have a shovel. He begins to dig through the ground with his bare hands. Zybec was speechless. He was then filled with a surge of determination and grabbed his sword. He slings it towards the ground and begins to dig with Azadin. The rest of the time passed by with the two of them silently digging through the ground to make graves for Ifin and Safia. The two were able to finally bury their bodies in the ground. Zybec then watches Azadin pray to the Archangel of Wisdom, Courage, and Mercy for the souls. He suspiciously points out how a man of the Herald clan is using the prayer of the Rescuer's order. Azadin shrugs his shoulders unfazed, saying he likes their ideology. Zybec calls him a reckless and brazen fellow for abandoning the destiny of his birth clan and serving the faith of heresy. Azadin smiles. He says if he does not uphold what he believes is right, his birth will have no meaning. Zybec questions what he likes about the Rescuer's order. To Zybec's surprise, Azadin begins to take off his bow that was casually slung onto his waist. He then informs Zybec that an individual that he reveres is approaching from behind. Stunned, Zybec looks behind instantly. He watches the whole army under the leadership of his lord arriving. Lord Kajal smirks and asks Zybec if he likes the farmer woman. He laughs, saying Zybec should have told him then. He agrees that the woman was quite fine for a commoner living in the countryside. Zybec knew that the Lord figured out that he had taken care of the woman. He estimates that there are around 20 heavily armed soldiers. Even for him, there is no chance of winning. Lord Kajal's eyes shift towards the unknown man with Zybek. As Azadin aims his bow at him, Kajal questions Zybek about who the hell he is. Just then, Azadin lets go of the bowstring. The arrow smoothly pierced through the air and landed straight into a knight's eye. The knight was shocked by the sudden attack and began to scream in pain. The remaining knights were shocked to their cores. Even Zybek was taken aback. The heathen shot at the soldiers standing at the far end. In this situation, it was impressive. This time, the soldiers were prepared and dodged the arrow with their strong shields. But to their surprise, the arrow ends up destroying the shield it struck. The shield broke into two and ended up making an impact with the soldier behind it. Tears filled the soldier's eyes as he groaned in agony and died swiftly after. The soldiers were filled with terror at this point. Zybek's eyes widened and his mouth gaped open. He could not believe he had just witnessed the heathen's arrow piercing through the shield and curving like a live snake. Azadin then turns towards Zybek. He recalls his question of what he liked about the rescuer's order. He continues by saying that he liked the idea that a person's worth is determined not by their birth, but by their beliefs and actions. As he talked, he also readied another arrow to shoot. He continued speaking, stating that the one who rapes and massacres his people cannot be considered noble. Lord Kajal grits his teeth in fury. He curses Azadin in a fit of rage. He orders Zybek to kill the soulless heathen. Just then, Azadin jumped through the air while the others watched in horror. Midair, Azadin aims an arrow at a knight. He continues attacking left and right, a total ambush. The knights tried their best to get hold of the ruthless heathen, but to no avail. Azadin was quick and skilled. He continued shooting arrows with the utmost precision, causing agonizing screams to fill the air. One arrow almost shot Lord Kajal in the eye. Lord Kajal notices that Azadin's motive is not to kill. Rather, he wants to permanently disable the troops. He threw profanities at the heathen, questioning who he was. He coldly replies that his name is Azadin and that he is a herald. Kajal's face turns pale as soon as he hears those words. The knights were also astonished to hear that he was soulless. Kodal notices how Azadin is out of arrows and suggests the knights attack now. But Azadin does not waste his time and punches the man straight in the face. Kajal falls off his horse, groaning in pain. Azadin places his bow back into its place and tightens it. He stood steadfast on Kajal's horse, staring at the man. As he jumps down, a knight charges at him instantly. Azadin dodged the attack and dismembered his eye. He grabs his sword and tells the remaining knights to come if they are brave enough. He then remembers something. He quickly kills the knight with the sword. The others realize the heathen is obsessed with castration, a crazy, soulless heathen. Soon, the battlefield was covered in blood and the dead bodies of the knights. Azadin makes his way through it all towards Kajal, who is crawling his way away. Azadin comments that trash like him, who inflicts pain on the people, deserves to die. Kajal instantly activates his divine powers. Its blinding light made the knights feel as if they would go blind. He tells Azadin proudly that this is magic proof that noble blood, incomparable to a heathen's, flows within him. But he wasn't able to finish his arrogant statements as Azadin mercilessly cut off his privates. Kajal was too shocked. He looks down to see blood pouring out and yells in pain. He asks the heathen what he has done. Azadin chuckles and asks if he is mentally challenged too. He yanks his hair and Kajal asks what he wants. He vows to give Azadin anything, whether it is money or women. He reminds Azadin that he is the descendant of the sacred holy family. Azadin smiles. He says that unfortunately for him, he is a slayer of sanctity, a herald. Kajal turns to Zybek for help. But Zybek was in a dilemma of his own. In a state of shock, he says he cannot see. Kajal was enraged and reminded Azadin he was from a sacred bloodline. Azadin says he thinks Kajal will continue to live with vigor. He smiles, saying that is the right attitude and that he should live positively. With that, he wields his sword at Kajal once again, causing agonizing shrieks from the man. He had blinded him in both eyes. Azadin says he has been considerate of him even though he does not have a contractor. With this, he declares the emperor's law has been fulfilled. Zybek wields his sword, announcing that he cannot let Azadin leave since he is a knight of the Church of the King. He says that it does not matter if Azadin performs righteous deeds. Azadin groans in disappointment. He mentions how Zybek is not like the other knights of the Church of the King. Zybek was furious, thinking of his words as an insult, but Azadin shrugs casually, saying it was praise. He elaborates that the other knights of the Church of the King are nothing more than scoundrels forcefully expelled from their homes due to matters of inheritance. Zybek is about to speak, but Azadin interjects. He asks Zybek if he will be able to follow him in this state. With that, Azadin disappears, suggesting they will meet again if fate will. Nobody has been able to kill Azadin of the Herald clan. The Knights of the Church of the King were left with permanent losses instead. Zybek replays Azadin's words and knows he is wrong. That applies to him just as well. He could not help but smile. He feels like a weight is off his chest now. The scene shifts to the commoners begging their lord to exempt them from taxes this year. They try to explain that all the people are running and becoming nomads. As for those who have starved to death, they are now wandering the streets as undead. They add on saying that they are overrun with thieves and monsters. They apologetically say that they cannot afford to pay taxes. Margrave Kazel calls them shameless, saying they would surely ask for rations at this rate. The civilians tremble in fear and apologize, saying they are at their wits' end now. Margrave Kazel states that nothing will change the lowly blood that flows within them. He promises to provide relief if they wish. He then smirks knowingly, saying it will be on the condition that if they cannot comply with his request, they will all be hanged. The commoners exchanged worried glances. Margrave Kazel tells them not to fear, as what they all are asking for amounts to nothing more than a single page. He says that such is the nature of the grimoire. Hearing this, the commoners say that they are ignorant of magic and do not know of such things. The Margrave says that even ignorant fools like them will be able to find it. He states that if they simply wish for it, it will respond to their call and reveal itself. He says that he will exempt their village from taxes for 3 years and provide 50 bushels each of wheat, barley, and oats if they manage to bring him a grimoire like this. The commoners were taken aback to hear this deal. One of the commoners asks for the name of the grimoire, at least so they will be able to search for it. Using his magic, the Margrave answers that it is a copy of the Book of the Divine King. The commoners were shocked. After they leave, a snake slides from behind the curtains, shifting into a woman. The witch suggests that mentioning the name of the Book of the Divine Kind was rather careless, but Margrave shrugs it off as nonsense. He says the search's rumors will spread across the continent either way. He says it would be wiser to find even a single page before then. The witch then reveals that the Margrave's son has fallen victim. Margrave interjects, confidently stating that Kajal's forces would not fall so easily, as even Sir Zybek is with him. But the witch revealed that their opponent was the Herald clan. This catches the Margrave's attention. He is sure they are also after the Book of the Divine King. They will surely need it if they wish to be free of the curse of their duty. He asks the witch if Kajal is dead. The witch discloses that she heard Kajal has lost his sight in both eyes and his reproductive organs are damaged. Margrave Castle scoffs in disappointment. The witch asks, what does he plan to do now? The Margrave orders for soldiers to be sent to their vicinity and kill the Herald clan. The witch obliges and says she will make contact with the commander. But Margrave tells her to command someone else to do so and pulls her by the hand onto his lap. He says he can just make another child if his original has been castrated. On the other hand, Azadin was having trouble in the wide desert area. He knew he would die of thirst at this rate. The owl asks why he had to put on a show, saying he would make it in 2 days. Azadin reveals that the heralds are despised by people all over the world after their emperor went and died without any plans. They are referred to as the slayers of sanctity and as soulless heretics. On top of that, he says he gave up on taking any luggage with him and ran as fast as he could because of the owl. The owl apologizes but is interrupted as the two notice an eerie presence nearby. Azadin recognizes it as a ghost. He realized after seeing that they were the people hanging from the trees. Ifin and Safia's spirits bowed in gratitude to him. Azadin also greeted them. He reveals that the land has neither the light of the king's virtue nor the blessing of the archangels, so it is not good to stay here for long. Azadin suggests they move on to the afterlife as he has repaid their grudges. Safia points towards a nearby well. Azadin thinks she is meaning to give him water. He says she could have just gone to rest and not worried about it. But he was relieved. He approaches the well happily and begins to pull out the bucket. but as he does so, he finds a strange piece of paper inside the bucket. The Herald clan was originally a race known as Aragasa. They crossed a massive typhoon from another continent and landed on the Wibris continent. The 8 divine kings of the Yiga's family ruled over the Wibris continent and originally held 8 thrones. However, during that era, one person monopolized all 8 thrones. The other 7 holy kings, who were brothers, were all subjugated by the emperor of the Yislat family. The emperor Yislat wanted to get rid of all remnants of the deceased holy kings. Meanwhile, the outsiders, the Aragasa, were in need of land to settle. The emperor gave the outsiders the grimoire, the Song of the Yellow Bird, and a spirit called the Emperor's Voice. In exchange, the outsiders signed a contract with the emperor and became his heralds. With that, Aragasa's hands were ruthlessly stained with God's blood. He became the emperor's ward, agent, and executioner. He personally executed the wicked nobles who went against the emperor's law and prospered. It was the most horrific scene that the citizens of Wibris could commit, as they believed in the afterlife and cycle of eternal life. Because of that, the emperor died and the empire was separated into 8 separate kingdoms. Aragasa was despised by those in Wibris, and the heralds fell and were called soulless heathens. But they faced an unexpected issue. The contract they had with the emperor was still in effect. Even after the emperor's death, the heralds needed to serve as the heralds of the emperor forever. Back in the present, Azadin recognizes the page as a page from the Book of the Divine King. It was said to be the source of the emperor's power. He thanked the ghosts of the civilians, telling them to rest in peace. He then stares hard at the piece of paper. Azadin then wonders if he would really be able to escape the curse of duty if he collected it. He knows it is rude to call it a curse, as it is an honorable duty under the contract. He guesses his fate is not a joke, as this just had to fall into his hands. The owl points out how he does not seem happy and asks if this is not what all heralds desire. There were 2 ways to escape the curse of duty. The first was to carry out the duties of the service contract and collect 100,000 gold coins. Second was to acquire the Book of the Divine King, but he is worried that this has started to spread throughout the world. The reason why the Book of the Divine King was torn apart in the first place was because of his father. His attention then diverts to finding water again. Little does he know that someone is discreetly following him. A girl looks at him in disdain, recognizing him as the son of the clan's worst traitor, who is talentless, powerless, and stupid. She turns towards a boy who is with her, asking if the useless man can really not use magic. The boy says he is not sure if Azadin is cursed or not, but he knows for certain that he cannot use magic. The girl giggles, saying she heard Azadin wet the bed until he was 8 and could not even tie a bowstring. She doubts he will ever be able to carry out the herald's duty. The boy suggests Miriam turn back, as there is no need for her to work for the lowest-ranking herald when she herself is a relative of the contractor. But Miriam decides to test Azadin's skills. She couldn't believe that the son of a traitor who couldn't even use magic was a herald. She thinks he is just taking up space so competent people like her can't become heralds. She aims her arrows at Azadin and quickly hides. After a while, Miriam goes back up to look but is struck in the forehead by a stone. Azadin approaches the two and asks Miriam if she is the one who shot the arrow. Miriam was stunned that he got there so fast. Plus, she could not believe he caught the arrows she shot in midair. Azadin asks for their names, who reveal themselves to be Miriam and Ishmael. Ishmael reveals they have come to assist him. Miriam says his quiver looked empty, so she just wanted to give him her arrows. Azadin refers to them as kiddos and tells them to go home. Miriam was pissed, reminding him that she is from the Etha bloodline. Azadin affirms that bloodlines have no meaning to heralds. He then calls them his subordinates. Miriam could not believe this cold man was the one who was rumored to be made fun of and bullied. Azadin coldly demands Miriam to apologize for being rude and to show respect if she wants something from him. Miriam reluctantly apologizes, and Azadin accepts her apology. He also tells her not to shoot anyone with her arrows from now on, as weapons are not to be toyed with outside of the Holy Land. He then suggests they return, as he does not need any assistance. He then suddenly halts as he remembers something. He asks for water but is interjected by an enraged Miriam who suggests they have a duel. Ishmael tries to stop her, warning her the man is dangerous but to no avail. Midiam could tell that Azadin was different from the rumors. Rather than being an idiot, he is strong, intelligent, and prideful. But wouldn't she be a big coward if she did not challenge him just because he is strong? And so, she officially challenges him for his herald position. Ishmael cried helplessly, unable to stop her. Azadin sighed heavily. He accepts that she will take over his position if she wins, but he asks if she realizes what will happen if he wins instead. Everything that is hers, including her life, will be his. Midiam confidently says she is prepared for the consequences. Azadin knew the bigger problem was that this kid was underestimating him. Azadin suggests that she give up before it is too late. He says that Arel's the only one who can win against a herald. He says he is aware that he does not have the best reputation, but he was not given this position for nothing. Midiam turns back and keeps a few paces away. She challenges him yet again. Just then, all of them hear the Emperor's voice validating the duel. They were shocked. Ishmael quivers in fear. The Emperor's voice is a spirit assigned to each herald. Since the Emperor's voice is now a witness, turning down her challenge is impossible for Azadin. Midiam was determined to win no matter what. A while later, Midiam and Ishmael are seen giving their water to Azadin. They were now in really bad condition. Ishmael could not believe what was happening. He had just witnessed an archery technique suited for the battlefield and sacrificing accuracy for projectile speed. That was definitely an extreme form of the Aragasa technique. Ishmael thought Azadin could not use magic, but he used the beauty of nature, Yellow Crane. He had defeated Midiam with ease. Ishmael was enraged when he saw Azadin push Midiam, who went crashing into a huge rock. He could not believe a blood relative of a traitor just did that to a child of the most noble bloodline. But he could not do much, as the duel was already over. Midiam had lost to Herald Azadin, and her fate was now in his hands. Due to Ishmael's interference in the duel, he is also to become the Herald's property along with Midiam. Tears fill Midiam's eyes in shame. She tries to kill herself, but Azadin throws away her dagger with a rock. He says he expected her to try something like that. Midiam sinks to the ground in defeat. Azadin coldly asserts that having lost the duel, she does not even have the right to die. She can only die when he dies or when he wants her to do so. He asked if she really challenged him to a duel, not even knowing something like that. Embarrassed, Midiam groans in frustration. Azadin sighs and smiles slightly. He gives their water back to Ishmael. He assumes this was enough to teach them both a lesson and says they are both free to leave now. Midiam and Ishmael were too shocked to even move. They could not believe what he was saying. Azadin suggests that they pretend this duel never happened, as it would be too bad for them if this went down in their record. The two were yet again speechless. Azadin continued on his journey through the desert, but to his annoyance, the two kids kept following him. He reminded them that he did not need his slaves and that they should go back to the sanctuary, as he had given them freedom. Midiam yells if he's just going to let a beautiful and talented young girl as his slave go like this. Ishmael tries to stop her, feeling second-hand embarrassment from her words. Azadin says he does not know about the beautiful part, but if she were as talented as Arel, she would not have lost. Azadin suggests it would be wise for her to think before she proposes a duel next time. He suggests that she never challenges someone to a duel again. He advises her to just assassinate if there is someone she must kill. Ishmael was surprised by his words. He observed how Azadin talked a lot more than he expected, but Azadin seemed like he was saying all of this out of genuine concern. Ishmael looked at Midiam, whose face was now flushed. Her eyes sparkled as she commented on how new this is. Ishmael was completely stunned by the sudden change of mood. According to the contract of service, the Emperor and the Aragasa clan provide each other with what they need, and any traitor will meet a horrific death. This contract was once a symbol of loyalty and a mark of honor. But after the Emperor's death, it became a dreadful curse. Even after his death, the contract's effects remained intact, binding the Aragasa clan to eternal service as the Emperor's heralds. What seemed like an unending cycle of servitude finally began to show signs of breaking when the Herald clan intervened in the Terasar Kingdom's succession war. The Aragasa secured victory in the succession war and obtained a copy of the Book of the Divine King. However, a notorious traitor stole the book and fled. His name was Aker. Aker was eventually captured and demanded to give back what he stole. He was threatened that the curse would kill him if he did not hand over the copy of the Book of the Divine King. The clan threatened Aker the traitor with all kinds of methods, but their hope shattered to pieces and disappeared in the end. It is because Aker scattered the book in the heart of the World Mountain Range. And so, Aker became the first person to die from the curse of the contract. Because of the curse, he gave birth to twins in a male body, Azadin and Ariel, the twin siblings. Ironically, of the two, Ariel became the strongest herald in the clan's history, whereas Azadin was rumored to be a fool. But now, Midiam and Ishmael wondered who on earth spread such an absurd rumor. From what they witnessed, Azadin was far from being a fool. Azadin says that he has already clearly stated that he has no intention of taking them, and so they should not follow him. Midiam says they are not following him and just have something to deliver. She then takes out a letter, saying it is from the regional head of Salisma. Azadin scoffs, mumbling how that old man does not like him much. He decides to ignore the scolding about missed reports. The letter reveals that copies of the Book of the Divine King have been appearing recently, so he is tasked to retrieve them. It also mentions that it will be reflected in Azadin's performance review. Judging from what is written here, Azadin guesses that the other heralds must be aware of the copy. He asks the two kids if they are aware of this. Midiam says they do. But as she mentions his traitor father, Ishmael stomps on her feet to stop her from speaking. Midiam was annoyed and asked what that was for. Azadin tells them to stop it. He ponders and says he will have to head to Salisma to meet the regional head for now. He thanks the two for delivering the letter to him. Midiam turns on her charm and suggests they follow him as they head to the same destination. She says she can tell him what is happening in the clan too. Azadin awkwardly says that they can follow him if they would like since this road is not his alone. Midiam happily begins to follow him while Ishmael sighs in defeat. The scene shifts to the three taking a short nap. Azadin wakes up first and then gets the other two up as well. They continue their journey until they see a spring nearby. As they collect water from the spring, a bunch of men approach them. They stop the three, asking who told them to take water from their spring. Azadin says he has no intention of fighting them and asks what they want in return. The leader of the group smirks, saying he wants all of them. Azadin makes sure there is no room for compromise. The leader says he has a lot to say for a grown man. He then points out his mask and asks if he is a clown. He orders his men to capture the girl alive and kill the men. But a few seconds later, the remaining men were begging for Azadin's mercy. They try to clarify that they are just innocent people and not bandits. They revealed that they have only just been conscripted, as Margrave Kazel's children are forcibly drafting people left and right, driving them to search for some copy of a book. With frustration evident in their tones, they question how they are supposed to find something they do not even know about. They disclosed that they just wandered around aimlessly, after which they encountered Azadin. Midiam suggests they might just be thieves coming up with excuses. But Azadin doubts it, pointing out that this is not a road where merchants or travelers would usually pass. But Midiam turns grim, saying they will have to kill these guys to silence them anyway. Azadin tells Midiam he does not kill without reason. Midiam was shocked. Ishmael argues that it is only right to kill them. He says even if they are really good people, there is a chance they could expose their tracks if they let them live. Azadin says that does not mean he should kill them for his comfort, and everyone deserves a second chance. The men side with Azadin, praising his generosity. Azadin tells them to shut up. Ishmael was taken aback. He often sees some people who refuse to kill, but he does not expect he will see one from the Herald. Everyone's mouth opens in astonishment as they witness Azadin single-handedly knock out a guy. Azadin tells the other two to make sure not to move too much, or their face will be blown away with the wrong move. The men point out that he promised he would spare them. Azadin smiles, saying he will spare them, but only after inflicting permanent damage so they cannot harm others, even if they do not repent immediately. Ishmael and Midiam agree with this strategy. A while later, the men supporting each other began to make their way away. While some cried for their lost eyes, the others were sobbing about never having babies now. As they curse the herald, they suddenly encounter a giant ogre. He grabs hold of the leader's face, smashing his head with his huge hands. The ogre saw the men as food, capturing them in his basket. He then watched his subordinate feast on the leader's body. The ogre's eyes land on the nearby human village. His eyes fill with lust as he decides to make his way there for meat. The scene shifts to Azadin, Midiam, and Ishmael continuing on their way. They had also retrieved the men's weapons. Azadin tells the two that it is hard for one to understand others without having been in the same position. Azadin says losing an eye has bigger consequences than one would think. It was because the people they would have victimized for their raids are now people they fear. He is sure it is a good opportunity for the men to repent for their past actions. He then mentions how the men said that the Margrave is searching for a copy of the Book of the Divine King. Ishmael points out that the Margrave lost the succession fight. He wonders if he is trying to climb up the ranks by using the book to gain magical power. Azadin hums in agreement, noting that a certain political figure is clearly bent on gaining power. He then decides to remove his mask, which marks him as a herald, cautioning that they must remain vigilant until they leave Margrave Kazel's territory. Midiam and Ishmael are stunned. It is their first time seeing Azadin's face, and they're shocked to discover he has no eyes. Silently, Azadin wraps himself in rags for cover. Ishmael observes that, despite his lack of sight, Azadin moves as if completely unbothered. Azadin quietly admits that he does not understand it either. He has been able to see without eyes since birth. Midiam stares at him in disbelief. Azadin encourages her to speak her mind if she has something to say. Hesitantly, Midiam comments that he looks like someone who was once very handsome but had a tragic accident. She adds, perhaps too bluntly, that it's better to have meaningful scars than to be good-looking with unpleasant eyes. Ishmael scolds her for being rude, but Azadin says she's simply echoing the words of the one who gave him these scars. When Midiam asks who it is, he reveals the name, Ariel. He explains that Ariel found it unsettling that he lacked something so essential, eyes. She said it was difficult to accept a face so incomplete, so she carved a wound across it, claiming it would at least allow people to imagine there had once been eyes there. That way, he could pass as merely blind. Midiam then asks if they too should pretend he is blind. Azadin responds calmly, saying there is no need, it is fine. They soon reach a nearby village. Ishmael says he can see the gate, but the line is pretty long. Midiam says it is also the village where the Imperial Road begins. Azadin says he is a pilgrim on a solo pilgrimage, and they are just some kids who happen to join him. Referring to Ishmael as puppy eyes, he asked if this is how it was when you were last here. They all look in the front to see some guards stripping a man of his belongings. Midiam turns furious, remarking that they are basically stealing. Ishmael says it was not this bad when they were last here. Azadin quietly watches the guards. It was as if they were looking for something since they were looking at it thoroughly. One of the men in the line approached Azadin and asked if he could not see. Azadin says he cannot, revealing that the two kids behind him are orphans on a pilgrimage with him. The man sympathizes with him. Azadin asks what is going on here. The man asks if he has not heard of the rumors that there are copies of the Book of the Divine King going around. The man elaborates that the rumors say that some Herald clan members made copies of the Book of the Divine King after stealing it, and that these copies are appearing all over the world. Those under Margrave Kazel are hunting for it right now. Azadin mutters how there was more than one loser like that. He knew this situation was not good, and it was going to be a bit annoying to deal with. The man in front of the line yells at the guard that he needs the money to feed his family. He asks why he is taking his money if he is only looking for the Book of the Divine King, but the guard pushed him away. The guard mockingly says that a grimoire can take many forms and shapes, therefore it can be in the shape of money. Another guard also joins in on the film, saying they will inspect the money and return it to him later if it is not the Book of the Divine King. The man's daughter yells at the guards that this is stealing, which is bad. The guards curse her and question if she is asking for a beating. The man shields his daughter, telling them to stop threatening a young child. But the guards punch the man in the stomach hard, then they tell him to raise his child better. Midiam was enraged and suggested they fight, but Azadin tells them to wait. A messenger hurriedly approached the guards and whispered grave news. It is because the guards began to hurry inside the gate after packing up. The people outside were confused and wondered what had occurred, but they were taken aback as Azadin said an ogre was spotted nearby. He says he heard what they said because he has good hearing. Midiam and Ishmael were shocked that the guards closed the gates due to this. All of the people began to shout for the gates to be opened. Inside, the guards were on standby for the incoming ogre. Margrave Kazel's illegitimate child, Tarkiv, questioned the guards if they locked the gates. The guards replied affirmatively. Tarkiv, since they have confirmed there are no copies of the Book of the Divine King here, they should get out of there with the things they took. He then tells the other to fend off the ogre and any other monsters that get close, since they have been trained sufficiently to be able to deal with them. The leader of the knights could not argue that he only trained them for one day. He at least asks him to let the people outside come in, after which they will command the defense here. Tarkiv scoffs but leaves it to him. Tarkiv then leaves while the knight notices how the ground is shaking terribly. Inside the ogre's basket, one of the men was shaking in fear. He did not know where they were headed and wondered if he was going to be eaten by the monsters. He peeks through a hole and his eyes widen as he sees a whole army of ogres chanting for meat. While some feared the incoming ogres, others were prepared for the fight. Azadin, Midiam, and Ishmael watch the elderly and women leave the village. One of the women hands them a lantern, saying the road will be rougher as they go on. Azadin has noticed that it looks like people will act much nicer if he plays blind. After the knights and mercenaries left, the knight that was left behind made a speech. He motivated others to protect the village and asked those who could fight to remain and fight alongside them. That way, the elderly and injured can flee a little bit faster. Midiam could not believe how pathetic the knights were. They just cast out their own people when it is their motive to serve those people. Azadin remains quiet for a while. He says that there may be the people of Wibris, but rather than casting out the people they are able to protect, they seem to think of it as a wonderful deed. Midiam agrees, saying it would be odd for an Argasian to sympathize with the people of Wibris. Azadin says he feels that way too. He then begins to disappear, saying they should part ways here. Before Midiam and Ishmael could stop him, Azadin had already disappeared. The men watched the army of ogres approaching. They became doubtful as they saw how much larger they were. The leader of the army reveals his name to be Goldu. He reveals that they collect meat and eat it for an exceptionally long time. He then points out the human village and the strong fort they had built around it. He tramples over it with ease. The knight leader ordered the others to shoot at him. One of the ogres takes this chance to break through the gate. Despite the villagers' desperate efforts, the ogres were overpowering them and breaking through the defenses. Cosette's father urged her to flee as far as she could. Suddenly, one of the ogres ignited a fire, proclaiming that the wand had reacted. The Book of the Divine King was nearby. But before it could say more, it was crushed beneath the foot of no one other than Azadin. Azadin stepped forward toward the front lines, announcing to the soldiers that he would help defend the gate. The knight's captain immediately demanded to know who he was. Azadin simply replied that he was a passing herald of the emperor. The knights were stunned, but there was no time for explanations. They watched in awe as Azadin effortlessly cut down the ogres. While slaying Goldu, he noticed its basket fall open, revealing a familiar face. It was a mugger from before. The man, cornered by an approaching ogre, began to chant. His body started to expand as he declared himself the future king of Fang. From a distance, Azadin watched, unable to comprehend exactly what the man had become, but he knew without a doubt that it would be troublesome. Goldu writhed in agony, his body racked with pain as vicious jaws tore into his flesh. He had always delighted in consuming others, but the bitter irony was that now he was being devoured by his own kind. Amidst the chaos, Azadin stood still, eyes narrowing as he recognized the grotesque creature towering above the battlefield. It was none other than the King of the Fang, an ancient beast whose power had long been whispered about in fear. The creature's focus, however, was not on bloodlust alone. It fixated on the folded paper in Azadin's chest pocket, a page torn from the forbidden book of the Divine King. Its intentions were clear. Azadin instinctively understood. This monster was hunting not for flesh, but for that single, sacred page. Somewhere, others like it must be seeking the rest of the book. But why? What power did the book hold that could command such desperate violence from monsters born of myth? Without waiting for an answer, Azadin launched an arrow toward the beast. The shaft whistled through the air, striking its mark but only enraging the creature further. It roared with fury, its bloated form shaking the ground. Yet Azadin met its wrath with calm derision. To him, the king's oversized fangs were more comical than threatening, massive, disproportionate, poorly rooted. He thought they were no different from shallow blades, deadly looking but fragile under pressure. He watched as the foul goo coating his blade hissed and bubbled, already beginning to eat away at the steel. Tossing it aside, he grimaced. Fighting beasts like these without coin or reward was foolish, a waste of good steel and energy. But he had already committed. From atop the fortress walls, human defenders had begun firing volleys of arrows again. Despite their fear, they couldn't ignore the sight of a lone man facing down the nightmare. The leader of the knights urged his men to support Azadin, recognizing him as a member of the fabled Herald clan. Dissent, however, spread quickly. One of the men protested, fearful of the consequences if the king's church caught wind of this treason. The church had declared anyone aiding heretics or outsiders as enemies of the crown, but the knight captain reminded them that the church had long since abandoned them. Those self-proclaimed saints had fled at the first sign of danger. Who were they to dictate judgment now? Another archer, hands shaking with fear, chose pragmatism. He didn't want to die and reasoned that the monsters were the greater threat. The herald could wait first, the beasts had to be stopped. Azadin exhaled, irritated. It would have been more useful if they'd simply given him their arrows instead of shooting blindly. Still, it was better than nothing. He picked up a severed fang from the battlefield, hefted it like a spear, and hurled it back at the creature. The first struck deep, then another, and another. Azadin began launching the monster's own teeth back at it, each strike accompanied by a subtle satisfaction. The creature shrieked, enraged, overwhelmed not only by the pain but by the mockery he was being wounded by his own fangs. It claimed to be the king of the fang, yet Azadin had shattered that illusion. The beast wasn't a king, it was a malformed puppet, an echo of something greater, perhaps even created by the true king of the fang long ago. The knight captain and his soldiers watched, unsure whether to fear the monster or the man who fought it. They whispered among themselves, debating whether Azadin had drawn the monsters here on purpose. Suspicion tainted their gratitude. Why would beasts of that caliber appear so suddenly and without warning? It was easier to believe this was all the work of an ominous outsider, a heathen whose presence had brought misfortune. But before their suspicions could take form, the battle was already over. The king of the fang collapsed into a pile of steaming flesh and acidic ooze, its reign ended by a man who stood alone. Azadin had won, but the cold stares that met him afterward warned that his fight was far from over. Now, it was not monsters he had to face, but men. They continue blaming the heathen for bringing the monsters, but Azadin was confused himself, as he did not know why a monster had appeared either. He says he just fulfilled his duties according to the emperor's golden coin. He says someone used it once to make a wish for them. The knight leader could not understand that someone made a wish to the demon of the golden coin. They guessed that a villager must have done it. They know they have been struggling so far, but they couldn't believe that someone made a wish to the Herald clan. One of the men asks if it is one of them. Azadin says he's not obligated to tell them that, nor does he have the authority to do so. Azadin asks if he can pass now, or will they fight him for the king's church despite having been raided by the illegitimate child of the Margrave and being abandoned. One of the men grows furious and warns him not to talk badly of their faith. On the other hand, one of the muggers looks around, wondering if it is really all over. Azadin notices him and advises him to be kind, as he has been given a second opportunity at life. The man's eyes filled with tears. And so, Azadin jumps towards the fortress, facing the knights. The leader tells them not to attack. Azadin takes a few arrows from them. The leader thanks him for his help. Azadin smiles and takes his leave. He thinks of the man as a fool. It is because if the right person had heard him, he would have been executed. Azadin rushes through the forest. The owl pointed out how he lied so casually about the golden coin. Azadin says they would have lived in fear because they had gotten involved with a heathen otherwise. The owl questions if he doesn't resent them, especially since they treated him like that despite the fact that he defeated the monster for them. Azadin asserts that humans are weak. Either way, they were nice to him when he was pretending to be blind, so they deserved praise. But he says he is tired after all the running and fighting without the golden coin. Azadin soon catches up with the kids. Midiam and Ishmael were shocked to hear that Azadin had defeated a Kurt kin. Azadin says he wasn't that strong, but the kids were still short. Ishmael points out that he wasted his energy and did not even get a golden coin. Azadin points out that Midiam said that it is a beautiful thing to help and protect people. After all, life is not fun without aesthetics. Midiam smiles, teasing Ishmael that he has never been a fun guy. Midiam says it is because she is pretty that the evacuees let them go. Azadin scoffs and playfully says it is because she is a kid. Midiam protests that she is 13 and there is a queen in the north who married at her age. Azadin shows her the ogre's staff and asks if she recognizes it. Midiam checks it out while Azadin reveals the Kurt kin had it. She says she is going to have to concentrate really hard for this one, but she does not have the stamina at the moment. Sudden realization then strikes her. She asks if Azadin is acknowledging her as his subordinate then. Azadin says he is just asking for a favor from a fellow kinsfolk. Midiam tells him to do her a favor in return. Azadin agrees, telling her to inspect it tomorrow. Azadin then tells them to hurry up as he has something to do. He catches up with the villagers who were fleeing, now back in his disguise as a pilgrim. He approaches the villagers, saying he got a bit lost. He then reveals that he heard shouts of victory from the village. He says it will be all right for them to return to the village now. He suggests they reach them from here with something like lantern signals. One of the villagers points out that the lanterns where the gates are on. This means that the Vigilant Committee really must have succeeded in fighting the monsters. Cheers filled among the people. Azadin suggests they send in a small group of people to check first. The woman turns back to talk to Azadin, but he had already disappeared. Azadin rushes away again, feeling like he will fall asleep within seconds if he were to lie down right now. But he halts as he sees smoke rising in the distance. They were knights, talking about how the nearby village faced an ogre and a drought. They think the place is done for. Azadin guesses there must be the scumbag who ran off earlier. He sees some precious items lying around and realizes that he is out of money. The owl remarks that he has hit the jackpot. Azadin needed the money, as traveling required. The next morning, the Margrave's illegitimate son, Tarkiv, was furious to see that his loot had been stolen. He confronted the knights. He protested that they were ambushed and did not have time to respond. One of the men says that this is not the work of a mere thief, revealing that one of his own belongings has also gone missing. He tells Tarkiv that the little snooker will move on to the next village and instructs him to issue a conscription order on that village using his authority. Tarkiv says the closest village is a public stage station. He says that since the place is managed by a noble, that would be difficult. He asks why he has to do that and why the man is bossing him around. The man grins and says he will then plunder that place in his name instead. He tells Tarkiv not to worry as the dagger was a gift from a witch. Just like he said, the dagger begins to glow, revealing magic. A spider pushes through his flesh and enters his body. Tarkiv is shocked and asks what he did to him. Soon, Tarkiv collapses to the floor in pain. The captain of the knights tells him not to worry as the spider in his body just gave him a little sting. He then tells Tarkiv to listen carefully or else the spider will start laying eggs inside him, and once they hatch, it will be a spectacle. Tarkiv is extremely frightened and asks what he wants from him. The knights were too stunned to speak or move. The captain of the knights says he will plunder the public stage station and capture the little rat who stole his belongings. On the other hand, Midiam and Ishmael sleep peacefully. The owl eventually wakes them up. Midiam sees Azadin holding two staffs. He reveals that he found the same one when he looted the mercenaries' supplies yesterday. He says it is the exact same one that the goblin had used. Ishmael takes it instead of Midiam, saying he can look into it. He warns them that it may be cursed. Ishmael begins to examine it, revealing that he sees a mental image of green and black. Azadin says that he should have seen a red mana if it belonged to the King of the Fang. He wonders if it belongs to a different Kurt. Ishmael agrees, saying its function is searching for a specific target. He explains that it is made to point at something, but since it is not durable, it will break easily. Nevertheless, its creator is of great caliber, and the staff seems to have been crafted hastily, yet its performance far surpasses that of most magic tools. Azadin wonders over the matter. It was a warrant created to track the copies of the Book of the Divine Game. If there is more than just one of these, it means he will have to deal with more trackers from now on. For now, he decides to go take a look at those who lost this item. He notices how their atmosphere has changed overnight and that they are preparing for a real battle. He knew their purpose must also be to collect a copy of the divine book. He expected them to do something after losing the warrant, but to think they would resort to sheer force. Down below, Midian and Ishmael question him about the situation and ask if he saw anything. Azadin reveals they're planning to attack the next village. Ishmael says that one scale is bigger than an average village. Midian could not understand the recklessness behind their decision, wondering if they might have a reason to become this desperate. Azadin hides the staff and puts on his disguise. The three then make their way to the public stage station. The knight at the gate lets them in for free. Midian and Ishmael were mesmerized by the bustling streets of the village. Ishmael excitedly points out the wagon from the Peddlers Association. Midian was relieved that they can finally take a break. Hearing about the Peddlers Association makes Azadin ponder deeply. The scene shifts to a man pondering over the past. When he was a child, Arel was known to be the greatest genius of the clan, who became a herald at the age of 3. In his youth, he had to learn the truth of it through a broken ankle. But that was not all. Arel was far more competent and stronger. He certainly gets distracted as he hears some noise outside. The Coruscant Peddlers Association began as an association of small merchants, but it grew and is now known as a great organization within Coruscant. In truth, however, it is one of the ghost organizations run by the Herald clan, in other words, the Aragasa people. Therefore, all the merchants of the association are Aragasans. Azadin thinks it would be nice if they could lay low today. But of course, fate was not that merciful. A few men soon recognize him as the renowned Sir Azadin. They mockingly ask if the past 3 months of pretending to be a herald served him well. They are surprised he already has servants after only 3 months. Azadin clarifies that these children are not his servants. They tell him to at least help change the goat's horseshoes. One also hands him some loot, telling him to exchange it for money. But the men continue to pester him, pointing out that he became a herald thanks to an elder's recommendation, even though none of the formal procedures were followed. They also mockingly remind him that he was the bedwetter who fell behind in basic training. The men notice how he brought quite a few expensive items, guessing he must have stolen them somewhere along the way. Ishmael says he has an inkling that this is pretty bad. Midian is enraged, saying that Azadin is still a herald regardless of his birth circumstances. Therefore, they should be helping him. The men hand Azadin a change of clothes. But to his surprise, it is a woman's robe. He tells them to cut the childish pranks as he doesn't want to beat them to a pulp. Hearing this, the men grow furious. Midian confidently suggests they resolve this with a duel if they're so frustrated, unless they're scared because of the duel's risks. But Azadin knew she, of all people, should not be saying something like that. One of the men scoffs, saying she's just talking big because she doesn't know anything, assuring her that Azadin couldn't take a single punch. Midian is infuriated and lands on top of the man with a knife closely stuck to his throat. She asks if he doesn't understand the situation he is in. She reveals she is of Etha descent, so how dare he make such sarcastic remarks. She suggests he step forth and prove himself with his actions. Soon, a crowd begins to gather around as they hear the commotion. A man approaches them, saying things seem to have gotten a little too heated here. The man greets Azadin and introduces himself to Midian as Durik. He apologizes on behalf of his comrade and asks Midian to stop. Midian obliges. Durik then approaches Azadin, suggesting he wash up and have dinner with him. Azadin agrees. He feels refreshed after soaking in the bath for some time. Ishmael asks why he just stood there and did nothing. He says he heard those who challenge Arel or make remarks about her immediately pay the price. Azadin says Arel has her own way of doing things. Ishmael calls him an odd person. Azadin chuckles and says that's why he should hurry and convince Midian so they can be on their way, otherwise they'll grow odd like him. At dinner, Azadin is surprised when Durik questions him about Arel. He asks if Azadin has heard anything from her, to which he denies. This irritates Durik, and he asks if Azadin is not concerned about his older sister. Azadin says she's not someone worth worrying over considering her abilities. Azadin begins to grab an apple, but Durik takes it away, telling him to start talking about his results. Azadin says he's doing his work properly and collecting gold coins too. Durik tells him to forget that and asks what happened to attacking the other merchants' associations to keep them in check. Azadin tells him to screw that. He shows him the magic wand from before and asks if he's ever seen something like it. Durik says he has. He elaborates that the Kurt bishops use this tool to search for the copy of the Book of the Divine King. Azadin comments that it seems like everyone knows. Durik says he's the only one who hasn't been making reports to the district leaders, so this is why. He then says that bringing in this one is a good contribution, though it would have been best if he brought the Book of the Divine King's copy. Durik is stunned to his core when Azadin reveals that he did. It leaves him speechless, guessing all the other heralds came back empty-handed. But after a moment of silence, he seriously tells Azadin to hand the copy over, shocking him. Durik turns furious as Azadin refuses to hand over the copy of the Divine Book. He asserts that they can protect the copy of the Book of the Divine King much better than someone as powerless as him. Azadin asks Durik if he does not think it would be more difficult for him. He explains that one of the illegitimate sons of the Margrave, along with his mercenary group, is heading this way. Among them are heretics that follow Kurt. Durik scoffs and asks if he really thinks they would lose against them. He says he might have lost to Errol, but he is a former herald. Azadin says that is the problem. He asks if he does not think there would be rumors if a bunch of merchants fought too well. Durik says that is not what is important. What is important is protecting the copy of the Book of the Divine King. Plus, he points out that Azadin is much weaker than Errol. Azadin sighs, saying he is referring to when they were all kids. He remembers he was no match for Errol when he was a kid compared to how he was back then. He has become much stronger, but Errol now is the strongest warrior of their kind, with countless followers at her feet. It had been years since he last saw his sister, and so he cannot even imagine how much stronger she would be now. Azadin shakes his head, saying he is handing over the copy to the regional manager himself, as that would be for the best. Durik tries to argue but gets interrupted as a man hurries inside. He reveals they have met a problem at the eastern gates. Earlier, at the eastern gates, Tarkiv had arrived with his army. The knights stopped them, saying they are too many in number to pass through. He tells them to camp somewhere else and come back tomorrow. Tarkiv laughs and praises the knight for good work. He then bribes the knight to let him in. The knight frowns, telling Tarkiv that he is putting him in a tricky situation here. Tarkiv says that they will both end up as priests in the king's church if something goes wrong. With his attention diverted, the captain of the knights strikes his eye. He quickly ends up killing the knight, shocking Tarkiv. Soon, a fight broke out. Tarkiv argues that he did not want the knight dead. The captain tells him to be happy because the raid is no fun if they do not do this much. Tarkiv yells at him that he is making it too difficult for himself, reminding him that there are 3 gates here. The captain casually says that it is not something to worry about. He stares at his hand, activating magic. It causes the opposing knights to struggle with spiders infesting inside their bodies. Initially, the knights scream in pain. But then, as if in a trance, they murmur how full they are of power. Tarkiv realizes the captain is a Kurt heretic. The captain smirks, commenting that it took him long enough to notice. The captain suggests to his young master that they work together as mutual aid. Okay, he will get the Book of the Divine King, and the young master will get his revenge. He smirks knowingly and exhales. This causes spider eggs to grow out of Tarkiv's abdomen. This causes him to scream in pain and collapse to the floor. The captain says he does not have any choice now. The captain laughs, ordering his army to not let anyone leave the village. He then orders them to get the rat that stole his belongings. When civilians tried to fight their way out, the heretics refused to let them leave. Those who argued were physically confronted and pushed away. Strangely, the heretics' mouths drooled as they met the civilians. Their scent made them hungry, but before they could eat up the civilian, someone strikes the heretic with a sword in his head. It was none other than Azadin. Seeing the spiders infesting his sword, he recognizes them as subordinates of the Spider Queen, Arthra. In the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned for the next videos.